Hello everyone, this is Rogue Miniatures and welcome to the hobby table and another hobby video. So today I just wanted to talk about the modelling or building aspects of the hobby and what's the minimum or most essential items to get your models from the sprue to actually being built and ready for painting. So you probably know by now, or if you're just getting into the hobby, you're probably about to find out that there's a lot of tools and they're nice to haves, but quite often you won't use them that much or you don't really need them. So like I say, I just want to talk about a few of the essential items that I think you must have when you start the hobby or if you're getting back into it, and then I'll also talk about a few items which really I think you probably could do at the start, but you could get away without them. So let's look at item number one. So item number one is a pair of clippers. So we've got a couple of these here. We've got these included in like a kind of hobby starter set. But basically these are mainly used for getting your models off the sprue. So when you've got all your bits and pieces here, these just allow you to clip the models off where they connect to the sprue, which is all the bits of the frame that you're not going to actually need, and they just allow you to clip the models off safely and without damaging any of the model. So they can just clip a piece out as you need it. So they have a flat side, which is the side that you use, and basically if you put that flat side up to flush with the model and you go to clip them, it's not going to damage the actual model. That's the furthest it'll cut into the model. And you obviously don't, if you accidentally use this side, you can actually damage the model as it'll kind of clip that way rather than just be flush with the actual model. So that's item number one. So the second item that I would deem as an absolute essential when you start out is some kind of hobby knife. So there are various different types of these. Quite often you'll see them like a sort of safety knife with a bit of plastic with like a retractable blade that goes into the actual handle of the knife. I prefer to use something that's more like a scalpel. These have a couple of uses, but before we talk about them, I think just from the safety aspect, that this blade, it's a scalpel blade, so this is like so sharp. So if you slip with this or you like a bit careless, you can easily cut yourself. And speaking as someone who's done that several times by using one of these, yeah, just be really careful, and when you're not using it, put the lid back on it. So these will usually come with a pack of blades or spur blades, and like I say, when you get these out, they are so sharp. I mean, it's ridiculously easy to cut yourself with one of these. When the blade dulls, you can actually unscrew this and that'll release the blade. Get one of your new ones and then you can just slide that back in to the handle, tighten this up, and then away you go. So this has a couple of uses. Firstly, you can remove things from the sprue with this. However, I would recommend not doing that. It's really easy to sort of, if you're trying to remove this from the sprue and there's tiny little bits, it's so easy to kind of either slice into the wrong bit or just because you're putting pressure onto the sprue will snap back. And like if you're trying to remove something like this, it's absolutely tiny, it's so easy to break them. So that's why, you know, you could probably deem like the clippers as a not essential item because you can still remove stuff from the sprue with one of these. However, firstly, it's quite dangerous if you're say cutting a relatively big piece of the sprue. It means you have to put quite a lot of pressure on it. You can easily slip and cut yourself. So that's why I would say that you've always got to have your clippers for removing the bits from the sprue in the first place. And as I've said, sort of really small parts of the model, if you're putting pressure on the sprue and trying to clip them off with a knife, it's so easy just to break it, and then it's just a pain. Either trying to, you know, glue a tiny little bit onto the model, which is always going to be weak, fall off, you know, when you're using it for gaming or whatever, it's just a pain. So yeah, clippers for, you know, clipping 99.9% of your bits off. You know, if there's something in a really awkward place and you can't get your clippers in, you know, a one-off probably won't hurt, but you know, just from a safety perspective and for not damaging your models, use your clippers when you can. So the main thing that you're going to be using this for is tidying or cleaning up the models. So when you've clipped off a model, where you'll clip most of the sprue part away. However, sometimes there's just like a little bump, so you can use the actual knife just to clean off the little raised bit, and then you can use the back of the knife to just smooth that over. And then where you have where the actual molds meet, although the new kits are generally quite good at hiding them, sometimes you'll have visible mold lines, so you can use the back of the knife just to scrape the plastic away, so you're not going to have any visible mold lines or bumps. This, I would say, is more used, or I like to use more for the cleaning of the model rather than actually like cutting bits or cutting things off the sprue, although I do use it to like shave little bits and pieces off that I don't need. I was speaking of cleaning up the models. This is an actual mold line remover, which is basically just a blunt piece of metal, which you can just use for scraping over different areas. So again, this was actually just in a Games Workshop starter set, nothing particularly special. This I wouldn't say is an essential item, because if you've got your scalpel or your X-Acto knife, you can do everything that you would with this and more. So yeah, so second essential item is your scalpel X-Acto knife. So finally, the third item that I say that you're gonna need, that you can't get away with not having, is some kind of adhesive. Now, generally speaking, if you're starting out or you're using like Games Workshop or models or whatever, you're probably only going to need plastic glue or polystyrene cement. So this basically works by when you put it on the model, it actually starts to melt the plastic that it's in contact with. So then you can put the two parts of the model together, two bits of plastic, and as the chemical reaction like kind of stops, and you'll actually just join the two pieces of plastic, they kind of fuse together. So if you're using like resin kits, or you're sticking say like piece of metal or something that isn't plastic onto a plastic miniature, or if you're putting say two bits of metal together, or maybe stones on a base or something like that, you're probably going to want to use something like a super glue. So I have plenty of this knocking about, but because most of my models are plastic, I probably use it more for sticking like little rocks and stuff to bases, that kind of thing. Back in the day, you say with Games Workshop, most of the items were, or most of them, a lot of the models were pewter or lead, even when you go about far enough. So you use super glue a bit more, but yeah, I mainly just use super glue for like if I'm converting a miniature. The odd time if I've got a resin model, you can use super glue to stick them together. But I think starting out, you're probably only going to need plastic glue. So just a little recap. First item's essentially clippers. Second item that's essential is your scalpel or X-Acto knife, modeling knife, whatever. And then third item is your plastic glue. So these you cannot live without. So just to move on to kind of a few extra items that I would, think about investing in pretty early on in your hobby. I mean, the first one, which is again something that you've probably got around your home already, is a desk, or worktop, work area, kitchen table, whatever. You're going to need something to actually sit and model at. So, you probably have that already. So it's not. I'm lucky enough that I've got my own little hobby area, so I've got like a proper hobby desk that's just designated for me to do my modeling and painting at. But yeah, you're gonna need something to actually be able to sit down and use as a desk, or whether that be, you know, a desk, worktop, kitchen table, something like that. Now the second part of it is something you can see here, and that's a cutting mat. So whatever desk or worktop or kitchen table, whatever you're sitting at, you're going to want to protect the surface, because you're going to have, you know, you're going to be sometimes cutting, you know, into models. You're going to be, you know, super gluing stuff. You're going to have paint knocking about, like, you know, whatever. You're going to have adhesive, you're going to have paint, and you're going to have sharp knives. So you're going to want something to protect the actual work area that you're on. So this is just a, you know, actual double-sided like cutting mat that you can get from, you know, I got this off Amazon. So you don't necessarily need something like this. If you've got like an old newspaper, you can just put the whole newspaper down and use that to cut into, to paint on, and whatever. That'll protect the area. So I'd say you're going to need something to protect your desk. If you don't want to go out and buy a cutting mat, just use, you know, newspaper. Now the third thing is probably also something you've got lying around at home, and that's a light source. So if you've got like a desk lamp, or like a task lamp or something like that, or, you know, for the modelling side of things, you could probably get away with just your ceiling light in a really well lit room. But when you come to actually start to do your painting, you're probably going to want, you know, like an actual table lamp that you can get really close to, so you can see what you're doing. But yeah, so your light source, that's, you know, a kind of, you know, another thing that you want to think about getting pretty early on in your hobby. Now this fourth item, the bonus, is just, or bonus items, is something you've probably got lying about at home somewhere, and that's sticky tack. If you've not got this, this is like, you can get this for like next to nothing from like a stationer or like a, you know, like a $1 or £1 store. But this is really useful for various different things. So if you were going to be sort of like just working out, just test fitting your model and seeing how it looks, you can just use a piece of sticky tack and kind of just stick your model together. If you're like doing, you know, a conversion, or you're kit bashing something, again, you can like stick bits on and see what it looks like before you actually have to start gluing everything together. It's also handy for models where, say, you've got a really detailed bit, so like the head of the model or a shield or something like that, you want to spend a little bit more time on, or it might be obstructing other parts of the model. You can just glue everything else together and then just use the sticky tack just to put the head on, so you're not going to lose it, or the shield, stick of the shield on, so you're not going to lose it, and then you can actually take it off and sort of do the detail work and painting on that like small bit or focal point without actually having to, you know, the other parts of the model getting in the way, or you getting, you know, like paint on other bits of your model that you might have already getting painted. So yeah, this is just for having sticky tack, but I'd recommend it's something that, you know, it's only a simple item, but it comes in really handy. So the next item is, again, something that for keeping your model, you know, your hobby area tidy and not losing your bits of your model as you're building them. So you're going to want some kind of containers. So I mean, this doesn't have to be anything you go out and buy. You could just find something around your house. You know, this is like the top of a Pringles box, an old bit of Tupperware that I just found in my flat. This is a piece of like a, you know, sort of a stationery, like sort of desk tidy. And then this is like, I think this was from like a sewing kit or something. But essentially what I use these for is when I'm building or painting, this larger one, I pretty much just have all my tools, all my bits and pieces in there. So like I can just get it out, put it back in. When you're building stuff, your hobby area can quickly turn into absolute chaos. So if you've got somewhere nice to just keep your, you know, nice and tidy, just to keep all your tools and the things you're working with, and then I use these smaller ones for just keeping bits of my model, or bits of the model I'm building in. So as I'm like cutting piece off the sprue, rather than just leaving it on the desk and then things can get knocked off, like you can say come back and you say you know, if you've got a cat, he jumps on your hobby desk and knocks everything everywhere, whatever. It's so there's nothing more frustrating than when you're building a model to realize you get to the end and there's a piece missing. So basically, I just as I clip these off the sprue, I just put them in the box, and then they're not going to get lost. And then obviously, like, this is a part of the model that I'm kind of building at the moment, so as I'm sticking these bits together, they just go in the box and yeah, don't get lost. But again, this is something you've probably got around your home, so not too you're probably no expense for these items. So now the final bit, or the final item that I would say you want to probably look at getting early, even though it's probably not essential, right off the bat, is to get some putty. So this modeling putty, there's various different types. This is like an acrylic modeling putty with an actual applicator, and then this stuff is milliput. There's various different types of this. This is the super fine version. I actually prefer to just use the regular milliput, to be quite honest, but I didn't have any of that in a box. This is what the regular stuff looks like. This is an epoxy resin putty, so two-part epoxy putty. So basically, these come in 2 parts, and you just take equal parts out of these, just put them together, start mixing them and kneading them, and then it gives you a putty or a resin that will start to dry in about 2 hours. So you've got a bit of working time. And basically what these are for is these, you can use them for various like you could use the epoxy one for like sculpting bits on your model, but the main use of these will be for filling any gaps. So this is a model from the Night Haunt Age of Sigmar models, and these are found especially I'm just trying to get some light on it. These had a lot of parts that, like, when you stick them together, it has a really visible sort of like gap between where the 2 parts are stuck, and because they've kind of a lot of sort of like cloth or like sort of ethereal ghosty sort of stuff going on, they're really obvious. So this will basically, for this job, I tend to use like the plastic putty and just basically apply a little bit of it into the gap, and then you can just like smooth it over just with like a little wet piece of kitchen towel or something like that. If you're just building your models to sort of tabletop standard and you're more interested in the painting aspect of it, that's why I said this is probably a nice to have, but this is still what I would class as like a not an essential. If you're just building to tabletop standard, and you might not really care about 2 little bits of little gap in your model. If you're like me and that would just do your head in, like, I would suggest getting some kind of putty just to fill those gaps in. But yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to do another video from the modelling aspect of how, what the correct way to use all these items are, and give some examples of how to use them properly and what they can be used for. But I will go into that in the next video, or in another video, so this one isn't too long, because I bet this is getting on for 20 minutes already, if not longer. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, and in between time, have a good time modelling and painting. Enjoy your hobby. Bye.